glorious conqueror, the violent and destroyer, the one gone beyond the fully awakened being, God who knoweth the world, the spring of life, and he took hold of the he knew the completely fully awakened one, the infallible infinite destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the supreme demonstrating his offerings in multitudes of ornaments earth, in himself demonstrate that he says, I succeed with the soul. To you who are wise says, I prostrate. This pure holiness was supremely pure, with the most strength holy melting, taken the place of all three worlds, the Lord of days, Lord to you I prostrate. With supremely triumph, space and fullness, godlike goals to you I prostrate. God's tree-like view, the three worlds, incomparable vastness to you I prostrate. The sacred and great compassion, the founder and all understanding, the purity there with all these psychological to you divine bodhisattvas I prostrate. The dignitary, the inspiration, one half the liberation and also shows liberation, the whole uniform enlightenment realization, you are guardians of all great souls. To you the sublime community, homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ancient pathways, to all homage to singing kilograms, atoms, and all aspects, the supreme faith fundamental, to all collective non-great perfection, the form non-geographic great perfection, the few non-direct perfections, a star of visual elevation, the great Buddha, liberation and also to you are homage. I breathe in space, light, heat, power, sleep, efficiency, and love. Beauty clear, infinity, supreme great falsehood, the beautiful false and the irreverent samsara, the spiritual enlightenment, I prostrate to the arrogant of Buddhism, psychophysical ignorance, psychophysical ignorance, is the great community of the Master, great community of Bodhisattvas, and their divine embodiment of the soul, the concentration on the benevolent aspect. Every time the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas in the voluntary practice of the profound meditation, he always finds the universal sentient man. He is the infallible embodiment of the greatest demonstration of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, Ishvara. How to be without complete strength, perfect equilibrium, the fact that the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are completely balanced, stable, whole, unshakable, detached from self-determination, perfect equilibrium, non-perfection of wisdom, slip of abundance, great healing, dignity, precise aggregates, also dignity, omniscience, omnipresent all, immense and non-finite all, always also without limitation, and the same great healing, dissemination, and position factors of consciousness are great healing, magnifies all divine emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, endless, self-sustaining, all-sufficient, non-fulfilled. Shayaputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no deliberation, no consciousness of matters, no perception, no sight, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no mental form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance and so on up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and harm. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shayaputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without
completely pass beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. For the Buddhas who dwell in the three types also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be guided into truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Gayata, Gate Gate, Aragate, Arasamgate, Bodhisoka. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who trained the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration, named the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you indicated. Even the dark is rejoiced. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharavatiputta, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding their entirety, along with the world, gods, demons, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken light of Bhagavan. On page 25 of the short mandala.
Pashi Dushi Meta Chu Nje Nede Gembade Sange Shindu Mete Umaji Chokun Namba Shema Jepa Sho Kenam Ki
Shurugurvanga Kenze Dindine Chita Sambe
Chapa Padu So Mandala Kamiriya Taya
Sanje Chedan Soji Chanama Chanjo Bada Dani Age Chujin Jibe Sonam Ji Dola Penji Sanje Dobara Sanje Chedan Soji Chanama Chanjo Bada Dani Age Chujin Jibe Sonam Ji Dola Penji Sanje Dobara Sanje Chedan Soji Chanama Chanjo Bada Dani Age Chujin Jibe Sonam Ji Dola Penji
Trubasho Aru
하는 드링이 네 최퇴야디 최 간퇴야 최디니 대보시 최리로
Aru
다 최스 도만도 세야디 수수 군론라라레기요레 군론당 삼무당당로
Aru
아니 군론 상보지기 전에 신변기 심지 키네 예배이나니 겨울랍시 모시사토요레 제단디 인디에는 간 최퇴야디 심지 그거 신라의 팬도용이 취되네 닝기 선배분 꾸노 된지 제쇼스로
Aru. First, assuming the correct intention, the motivation that one is going to listen or listen to the teachings which are of the great vehicle, the Mahayana vehicle, and really whether something becomes Dharma or not depends on the motivation, depends on the mental attitude. So if that mental attitude is one of good heart, a kind heart, waves of merit come from that. So please think one is going to listen to benefit other sentient beings, adopt that motivation.
Oh yeah, da ni gawa komla tiring anazo. Ni dindeji chugi chunga de gawa samni chenra.
Rejoice that today one again has the fortune to hear such teaching.
Oh yeah, da mazu dan da khisi sanje gi yunden sanje gi juji ne. Kemba de zela ya ne. Top sigi yore sirwa. Ni top sigi junje de kare sana rang midun chogi. Ene konu minu rang midun chogi zewa minu. Seade midun chogi su nö matum nishi. Loji yo inzan dili ya da top sigi yore sirwa.
Okay, so we've been looking at the uncommon qualities of a Buddha superior, and we were looking at the first category of the strengths. So we left off, having been through them, on page 69. We are now looking at the middle of page 69. Vis-a-vis, why are they called strengths? It is because they cannot be surmounted by a discordant class or overcome by these invalid thoughts. No.
Da di kandres yungres lawina tanda ngaranzo ina tanda jik sim shiwage sim shiwe laosho sim mashiwa derwa. Sim mashiwe ge sim mashiwa chiya ge jujen geja dujaro khoyaro nezu dujaro thoya thoya ane mi dujaro de lab chewe de ngazo sim de lamsang chudu go che zan ding ngazo sim de midun chog shenwan de pa ju du yo res wa ngazo sim jing sim che zan ngazo sim la ngazo le nyon ji shenwan se do le nyomong ge shenwan si de nyomong ge kawa do na de je lo ngazo do de yo inza ngazo sim de midun chog shenwan de ju du yo res ta sanje ge sim de de ma yin ba midun chog ka ze yo be yin midunjo pa sirga nön shagi yores wa su midunjo su nö pa shaji midunjo di pa meba chadu yores wa 제가 근데 지다 근데 용구를 위해서 근데 용구를 위해서 먼저 단다 안한저 셈나라 지다 네 지 내주 담아로 공지 심투로야로 보다 네지 내가 제단으로 지금들 심투로야로 근데 연대네 근데 툭 람산 툭 줘야 돼 마음벌에 네 맞추게로 차그를 해야지 다디 차야지 열을 해야지 지워지 리기요 다도 지워들라 렌 야베나 자자 자담 렌 돌도 점나 자자 자담 요레스로
Not being able to be overcome by afflicted mental states. If we look at ourselves, although we want peace, we find our minds in a state of not being peaceful. And there are conditions and causes which contribute to us having that, the mind being ill at ease, such as when someone speaks badly to us, harsh words, or we see something that upsets us, we hear something. And then in conditions on those external things, our minds get upset. So that's a kind of sign that we have these kind of invalid, or what's the word, non-concordant states within us, or these afflictions. So really it's because we are our minds are under the control of karma and disturbing emotions. And so if we look at the mind of a superior Buddha, not only are they not affected from external negativities, but there are no misconceptions going out, in the first place. So then the question comes up, can we get to that state in the future when we are no longer upset, when we set about our work, when we interact with others, we are no longer upset, so we hallucinate? Can we do that? The question? 100% we can get there, to that state.
다 이내 딜라 니 수수 따와디 타고 진시데 조단야라 베즈 마체비체 아니 할하와데 저랑도 망고지 당아데 레는로 죽직제 두고요래서
야
아니 베진다 가셔야 돼 망고지 당에도 스타인데 적동으로 자유인데 나 미카셔야 돼 저랑도다 그 교회로 버체 낭자로 버체 찍들이 니네다 알아 민스케 미타메버지 그 중앙에 그 똑바든데 게다게 매윈자고 저랑도다 망보지 민라 가우도 니 알라마 첨부든데 저요스로 알라마 첨부든데 제가 다 거다 디네로지 셰야 딘데 레스타 심나네 사자르다 아니 나라 두시 가르샤나 메제 칸예야게 쳐들라 두시샤지 년고로 메제 밀라 다제 제베이나 아니 쳐디 심나 수고요 말아 좀 된데 간사마다 쳐렸다 성바 쳐디 수송이네 아니 심나 편배치디 송고요 베인다 데라 아니 삼로데스 마담바이나 가시 암조 그런나라 뇌카부 버레스로 왔다 민게라 첨부지 유스가랑 라마게라 첨부지 유스 디니다 베 타른 거질래 여여 라이미시 정원에게 아니 스스싱 냠네 지나가라 냠네 삼노든데 당고레스 랍제 라그도에 메데데 견한서 하고 그러 디카고레도 저와 코라메 뒤 짜스무 쉬비차자라 지 여라이로지 먼저 시고난 그 뭐뭐 사야 여라는 저걸 팽마라고 뭐뭐디 카일레용은 사야지고 그요로 이 저걸 팽으로 제가 아니 첩디라 두시고라 매비인자 아니 시스템디 다 로직직제 도이네 랑자로 스테이지 단도 타로 가제 처로 도나 아니 쳐 돼야디 먼저 디 빌라스를 추게겠어 차로 빌라스로
플라스터래.
빌라스 강로야 빌라스 하고라 시멘트 시멘트 타고 대추겸나 타로다
알레.
지난 먼저 가져 년배네 야 데스 오픈 만로지 데 삼로지 마담베이나 주어르스데 요 말스라 제가 나라도 주어만도에 가르치는 누구요 말에서는 당고들라 쉐버보들 여체차로 민유니지나 어디 가르랍션나 리스 민메니지나 다데데 딘데로 리스 다가란라 여체차로 마오볼 두시 메고 차자 데네 쳬라 두시 메고 차자 말아서 심심이야지 편도 마야다 가서는 쳬다 마오볼 닝가래 두시시라게 교외요 인자 심리 팽이요 말해서 다 릭직니 오네 지베 쳬 삼난다 체제 틱틱 코베이네 텔 삼나다인디 메젤레야 편도 연구요레스 다 디조 그러스나 수수응원에 배 더나당 아니 직펠라야 이지도 제마젤 라레 요서스로 릭지 진다 따고 마요 바이네 고 진다 팅마 카시지 요네 니 먼저 깨지시신 요 틱틱니지 수수 메제나라 케네 아니 배 메젤레야 편도 심부 중수해야 되는데 용되게 어레스 나라서 가시 니마 dunda지라 니마니 숨 진다 용바이네 지나 깨지셔베데 나라 데 편도 중수라요 말스 단도 다다 nyugudo스라 다 라야니시 사오사버자민도 삼다네 두두두 쳔네 디쳔나 먼저 톱세야 게토야 요 말이서 톱쳐라 삼노 데스 당고레스라 삼노다네 갈래 lo ta bena lo ju ji na lo ngama to lo ju ji kon lang ye sim de den de ji yo ta tanda tek si ju ro je do sha sam sam ji yo na ne ta ane top sa de mi din jo ge zimini wa sa de ro wa yo ro ti me na da ka bu shi ji ro da re do
So, in the 11 years I've been here, I would say that in general, the way one approaches the Dharma comes down to one's discernment. From what I observe, my experience, one's discernment or one's perception of it. There is a danger that, over a long period of time, that due to pride, one's perceptions or discernments become thickened or harder. The openness to Dharma should be that it should open the mind. So the question could come, why has there been no change? And that's because, you might have made up your mind about a certain teacher, that they didn't have a particular reputation or weren't famous. And so therefore you didn't pay much attention to what was being taught. That is a possibility. But as Lord Buddha stated clearly, do not rely, do not kind of discern, do not rely on the teacher, rely on the Dharma, meaning that one should really listen to what is being taught and be able to discern it as the Dharma, no matter who is teaching it. So the lack of change that could have occurred over a period of years could have come because of that poor discrimination. But then others who have, and then Lord Buddha clearly said that whether the person has benefited from the Dharma is not the person that you're listening to, but whether the Dharma being taught benefits the mind or not. And in some circumstances, it is like a vessel that's overturned. So if the vessel is overturned, nothing goes into the vessel, because that discernment or that attitude has already been made up. Is that clear? It's already been fixed. That you might have in mind a Lama from afar that you take advice from and have connected to, but that is from afar, and that would be like looking at momos in the window that you cannot eat because you can only see them from afar. You don't actually eat them and get the experience. So just be aware of this, not relying on the teacher, rely on the Dharma that they teach. And then seeing, because there are yet others who might not have come for 11 years, but just come to a few teachings and only heard a couple of words, but have been able to get great benefit in this life just out of those few words due to their interest and faith. So there's that other side, isn't there? Now, the point being made is that if the perceptions or discernments become very hard, like, when you put a coating over cement, what's the word? You seal it, If it becomes like that, then it's very difficult for the mind to undergo any type of change. And so these qualities we're talking about in the future that cannot be overcome by invalid states of mind or discordant classes, that's very difficult if the mind is not open to Dharma and keeps open to Dharma. No.
다 top 디 용할 배전 쪽으로 알아 배전 신
Yeah.
네 지 당보도 같이 수수 지 계제 세단도 교어대 당 상무단단 라고라고도 교험 담은 남상 묘모 방야 당 도고제 요마라 당부 라고라고도서 교당으로라 도스다나네 코칼레 곰시도로
Yeah. Now, of course, looking at these types of strengths, being able to overcome invalid states of mind takes tremendous effort, and such is not going to be affected at once. But first, what we can do is look at the way we speak and affect these kind of gross ways of behaving first, and then slowly change comes. No.
제단다 산제기 줄에 톱세디 단다 톱시주 다 톱주도 기승 로사버시 라모지 톱스의 균쟁 가래스라디 될야다 자진지 도진단다 그래서 미든초기 제원 미니베 자진지 도진단다 균쟁지 대다죠 그래서 자진사들 하자진라야네 믹스의 천자들 라자 돌지주에서로 도지파 디 돌지디네 라월에 체데되네 하자진라야네 미든초게 마로 뇌버로 같은데 전에 뇌버치 두고 매위서로 대단다오래서 산제기 유기 아니 켐바도서 미든초다 뉴몽바당 아니 시제드바당 아니 아주 차단 뉴몽당 신다파시는 수치가 천자도서 배낭가서 좀된 다자도 마셔지도 산제걸 하고 더와래 배상 제가 하고들 뉴그 파제시니 천자들의 유대 천자상만 매도를 주도해야 된대 중으로 해 된대지 다 등사 전문을 거제 미슈푼데 이제 에르밤데 이제 상만 매도 쓰셔나 아니 간대요 이제 상만 매도지 상만 텔라스셔나 아니 콘스 파사제서만다 신탄도 전문을 매우서 년가 전부도 와라 초직다나 안저 전문인데 조금 매우서 저를 삼사르지 제산데 산제기 톱징 안줄래 전문을 고사래서 되나 미든초 천자디 에르밤데 예디 매도 주시하나 간대요 용서래요
Those strengths then of a Buddha here are likened to the Vajra or Indra's Vajra, the hand implement that the god Indra has, the Dorji, that when conflicts occur between the gods, demigods, because of Indra's Vajra, no harm can occur to Indra. And similarly, the exalted mind of a Buddha superior, the exalted wisdom, cannot be overcome by afflictions, or what are they called? Knowledge. Knowledge obscurations cannot harm them. Nothing can harm them in that sense. So neither the gross afflictions or the subtle knowledge obscurations can harm an exalted consciousness. And the example was like when Buddha sat to meditate and the weapons of the Maras were turned into flowers. That would be wonderful in today's sense, wouldn't it? If the atom bombs that could be prepared to be used could be turned to dust and flowers, isn't it? Like how wonderful that would be. Because if we look at the world now, sometimes it seems like, well, there could be an end, some kind of end.
제가 어디 자진지 도제단다 인자 셰브레스 다들라 당고 축디네 자진지 도제다 임비긴데디 디 라메지 과자단다와니 시디지 지바 좀 봐셔스
라르기슬라
되나 안들 하단 하마인 버서 하단 하마인 버데 마슈 잡되게스로 안딜라 라메지 과자도서 천재게 란딜라야 뉴바로버지 천재도서 매도 차로로 근데 주어로로 근데 용되게스로 봐 디나신 아니 산제 주기 아니 켐바데 시립 먼저 다 디버스해야 돼 먼저 미딘초서 방자들 시립해야 돼 갈라서는 아니 시제 남샤 다시 타와 지다와시 시바 파드주제 디바들 시립스고요.
Yeah. So now going on to these analogies on page 69, where it says those very powers are like a Vajra against the obscuration of ignorance. So there are 10 of them. The first 6 strengths are likened to Indra's Vajra because they destroy the knowledge obscurations, which are like the armor of the anti-gods. It appears that the gods and anti-gods enter into disputes a lot, but the Vajra protects from harm during those disputes, like turning the Mara's weapons into flowers. Similarly, the Buddha's exalted wisdom cannot be harmed by the subtle obscurations to seeing the very subtle workings of karmic causality. No.
세상 시집세야디 아니 먼저 니니기 남샤 지다와 신이야. 아니 렌데기 남샤 타시타와 시다와 신이야. 아니 셈진지 감담에 나서 지다와 신이야. 도저 다 돈이도네 도저 시도고요 말아. 이제 남샤 타시타와 데다 산제 메시지 켄토고요 말아. 세상 디시와 제발라네 바드주지기 디바들라 시딥스 시딥스도 갑대베 되어와.
Yeah.
가르시야서 렌데기 남샤 타시와디 통도고 매비니들라 시딥. 안 디니기고 디니고지 로바타데 남샤 시도 시마도. 지로와당도 셈제 치포와다 겨와다 아니 망보지 셈제 수수 셈제기 시마도 요 망보지 산제기 시도고요. 어디 시발라 파디지 되어들 시딥스고요. 산제지 고만 토바치지 되어들 시딥스나 되거다.
So let's look at more at these knowledge obscurations that prevent us from seeing phenomena as they are in reality. So that can work on the level of not being able to see the subtle workings of cause and effect, or to be able to know the dispositions, proclivities, karmic dispositions and interests of the disciples. Well, realizing emptiness is one thing, but in terms of a Buddha that is beyond shade drip, the knowledge obscurations, the obscuration part of that is that, okay, so what is obscured? What is obscured are these subtle workings of behavioral cause and effect, or karma. And secondly, not being able to see that everything is like, in terms of the two truths, the two isolates of the one phenomena or the one entity. Thirdly, being able to see, for example, where so-and-so will be born or when they will die, where they will transmigrate to. These are the subtle things Buddha sees and is free from not seeing.
다디네 니 오마섬디 야진지 도제단다 메준제 카르스나 티숨 찍바단다 티숨도 아니 뇽주지 디와 좀 뇽주지 디와서야디 니 신의 토발로 파지 디와 칭와다 고바다 조다도 들어와 친구에도 들어와 친구에도 뇽주기 디와 조다 친구에 타라도 들어와.
Yeah. And those, the next two categories, the three of the second category, are like Indra's Vajra, because these destroy the wall-like obscurations to entering absorption. So what are these wall-like obscurations? You know, before you accomplish the samadhis, there are certain obstacles to that. Mostly within calm abiding, we're looking at the subtle levels of sinking and discursion. They're really obstacles, isn't it?
배진 단다 뇽주기 디와라 다 내려와. 이거다 뇽주기 디바사디 뇽주기 시에온디 뇽버 조바스 시에온디.
Yeah.
아니 삼디 숭매에서도 감성이 다베나 삼디 당보 뇽주 삼디 니베 뇽주 삼디 뇽버주 딜라야 아니 가르도 당보 시내 토고와 시내 토발라 아니 친구 타라도서 방고 요로 어두스 시기 요로.
Probably here, being able to destroy the wall-like obscurations of absorption is referring to, you know, when you look at the three realms, desire, form, and formless realm, of course, to traverse those more upper realms in absorption, one needs to cultivate shamatha, calm abiding, and then, of course, what's being vanquished at the various levels of the dhyanis. The four levels of concentration are these subtle thinkings and discursive thoughts.
다디네 오마직디 네 자진이 도제도 인데 디 싱점바단데 뇽모
And then finally, the next one is Indras because it destroys tree-like afflictive obscurations.
Then Sing Jumbola de Colors and Junshin, you know, and the Tower Chimbo, you do. Junshin, you all to pay you would what there's Tavet to me to set wood or Tena Shin, Sanjay, Kamba, the Newman bed Juba. Jumba, Tandang Aranzo, and Doja Shedan, Condo, Maje, Trado, the Be Sim to do that. Shazanda, the Meva Chavina, Negab de la Jibushu on Zara. Doja Shedan, Condo, Maje, Trado. Le DJ de Meva Chavi, Negab Meva Chavi, Susula, Negab Yasro, Tesera. That DJ Yuchinjela, Kaduina, that took the derriere, that took Duba derriere.
Yeah, like being able to rest under the shade of a tree at the afflicted level of these obscurations, because we are under the control of the level of the disturbing emotions like desirous attachment, aversion, jealousy, pride, doubts. So therefore there's no rest for us from those afflictions, but for the Buddha, they are destroyed, those tree-like ones.
The Junchans of Mamboji, anxiety and stress, lying to the summer. New moon, Tado, Dang, Ranjinji, Dang, Aje, Dang. And this shell some shade meva, Dang, Kaduina, Dang, Ajigo, Janya Samna, Teladine, Susula, stress, Dang, anxiety, Yomaji, Susi, immediately, you were so good.
Okay.
To the Chinab Jagdoda.
Because of being under the control of afflictive emotions, when we get anxious, when we get stressed, we're afflicted with jealousy, strong self-interest or self-cherishing pride, then not only you get stressed out, but you are discerned, others around you feel it, so you give them that blessing.
Lama to the end, Simni Shivashi.
When we're around the lamas, we get the blessings of their peace, but the blessings we give others is grief, stress.
Bless you, take the
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the day that she has a new moon said, the Dangone, new moon, new moon, the Jali, and the round scheme door, Ninja.
Really, what's being said is that as long as we're under the control of disturbing thought obscurations, no freedom. Afflictions.
Top said, Sanjay, you Chambala, then the J. Yoma, Sanjay Laya, Nechi Chadan Yumu, the Kawaka, Saman, Nuba, Paja, Yazajim, Yomar, Kawai Nave, Dewadang, Shiwadang, Yanjamishi. This is how I'm kissing Shevana Shire. Susu Sim, there's a tuna, Chilo Sama Yavuchara, Susu Sim, Tuna, and Yen Sama, Chilo Sama Tudu, that daily did Sanjela Sim, the Shivata do you in the Sanjela Kanatamje, Devasha, Kana, Devasha, Yomada, what they Chesa, the Deji Yunan, the Gosara, the Chesa, didn't you intend to the Shena. As it in the Giona, that on the Simjil Kudu, and Simjil in the Giona, the Kandea way on the that did check Tabella than a peasant should some dia, and it changes Simjia, the Rodora.
So, the strength of such an exalted wisdom of a Buddha superior, let alone seeds, let alone gross levels of attachment and hostility, the seeds and subtle latencies of acting in that way are completely gone. The only thing in the mental continuum is bliss and peace. So that means that their environment is always blissful as I mentioned the other day, it's similar when the mind feels happy. The way you see your community, your environment looks good, doesn't it? But the moment you're perturbed and upset, the world doesn't look so good. Well, a Buddha can only be in bliss. And when you really know those qualities of a Buddha, then you'd think, oh, I need those qualities. How about going for it? How about putting effort into getting bodhicitta? Right, so that will leave the 10 strengths. Moving on to the next one, which is the 4 fearlessnesses on the top of page 70.
Rabde samden sayade da sem samden shive ngushin nyumjuk sayade sem hajan chanyam borwa dedu de dewa da dungye inde sem ji emotion de je yomar da samden shiva relation da sanje phasha na ngo samden shive ngushin nyumjuk toyne dan doja shedan kondong aje thado de je yomar shinda phasha ne sem yo ta na ragwa chen shim ben sem du ta ne shirwero shira 하자 시라 찬양보 시오제 용고라 데삼데 시와 델데나 아니 람델 뎀베 네 델데네서 셈 델데네 셈 덴서 고란데 템보 시브지 요르바잖아
Okay.
안 델데네서 담배체 덴발라서 다최 파된데 최된데 셈지 이제 코르가나데 파차와 메베 라디체 테도kim바 제가 산제 그 또 민직바디 유드네 코그나라야 최셰라 파차와 양아 베비지 지 신나 찬나로 남다로 근데 지는 연구야 말와 제가 네 딘데들라네 민직바 아스리오 레스타 코덴로 들어
Yeah. Essentially now looking at this attribute of fearlessness, let's go to the definition first. So it's a little bit down, isn't it? Where it says the definition of a fearlessness is. So we're talking about firstly what qualifies fearlessness. Distinguished and exalted Noah, distinguished by the absence of anxiety in the midst of a retinue with regard to teaching the excellent Dharma and dependence on a final concentration that serves as its empowering condition. That final concentration then, as we mentioned, traverse or going up through the different meditative states to the 4th concentration, upon which the mind is extremely pacified. There is no appearance of the gross disturbing emotions at that level of the final concentration, the strength of it. What's happened here is that the mind has become very stable. Just as a basis, the mind's stability is strong. And from within that serves as a condition so that when the Buddha teaches, there's no worry or anxiety when teaching in the retinue.
다들 여시샤도와 여시데 란드 방바 탐제올라 민지과 떡과 탐제올라 민지과 신뢰 방제 탐제올라 민지과 님보 탐제올라 민지과 스도 시디르다 요 시디라서
Yeah, 당보디?
란드 방바 탐제올라 민지과
Okay. So then just briefly going through the 4 fearlessnesses as they are listed there. The fearlessness with regards to declaring one's own perfect realizations. Nipa.
떡과 탐제올라 민지과
Ale tambuda nipa di tes chukurwadi. Yeah. Ale tambu di shi di chirwa, di jela di yawa chigarwa. Yeah, tangpo di jodang dang nipa gi jodang tes mi jawa yori.
dinal etende jedan
Wara.
다 두슬랍쇼나 당보란 데마 값시버디 시샤제 당보 란데 방바 탐제올 민지고데 가르스나 코르지 우스스와 당보이 된다라 코르지 우스는 산제소 시 켈랑발라서 추든이고 메베스 란데 아니 방법 분석 탐지를 민지 봐스 코리지나데다 상제 스케일랑 바당 아니 디나 딜라야다 고와 신다게 라 미니버스나레 딘데시고다 란데 방법 분석 탐지를 민지 봐스
Yeah, so the first quality with regards to fearlessness of oneself, so the testing the fact that I am a Buddha with regards to your knowledge where you are and having no anxiety about that in the retinue.
아니 다드네 니버데 데레도 다음에 사원에 니면 데레도다 다게 사과세베 두어말로 방베
어디 방배든
아니 란도 방법 편조를 탐지해 민지 봐서와 당기디 란도 똑바 편조를 탐지해 민지 봐라 니버데 란도 방법 편조
오케이.
똑바 편조해야 돼또 똑바스디 니 켐베 연대 시기요와 네 방법 편조스디 니 산제주 꼭댕기 연대 시행고
okay. So yeah, I'll just clarify. We've gone down and when divided there are 4. So the first fearlessness was looking at Buddha's qualities of exalted wisdom in terms of the realizations, being able to fearlessly proclaim I am Buddha. The second one is talking about on the abandonment side. Is that clear? So the first fearlessness is talking about the realization side, and the second one is talking about what's been abandoned. So all afflictions are gone. What's ceased? I have exhausted all my contaminations. No, sorry.
데라도 다니 니버데라 다니 사과세바 세도
어디?
사과세스디 사과세바 데 디워말루 방바스 사과세디 뉴모
Yeah.
뉴모 바 세바 안테자마데베 디워말루 방바 아니 켈랑발라 아니 데메베 란데 방바 분조라 탐저 민지 바스다 네 산제게 네 디와 뉴모 바당 아니 디워말루 방바 인스 켈랑바데라야 아니
Yeah, so that second one where all afflictions are gone, a kind of cessation, it says right at the bottom of the second one, I have exhausted all my contaminations. Here, contaminations are afflictions. That is abandoned all obscurations without exception. So not only the afflictions, but the stains left over by them. So that's damjasha, means that resolve is made clear. It's like sealed.
Da somebody dejalasive divided that tebosum the Nindu chancing tebosum roa. Dila parjecheva jeva de maybe and shendun parjeva chula minjigwa tamjeva steva.
Right, the third one is with regards to the 3 vehicles. So these obscurations such as attachment that act to obstruct the three vehicles, what's being said is that because Buddha Superior sees those, he can teach those to remove those for those 3 vehicles practitioners. No.
제가 택버숨스 라인데 택버스도 먼저 코발레야 택버마 강바 야야들 강베 밥틱스로 네 림바들라 숨요레스 인도이 택바다란 얘기 되고잖아. 들라 옹부 두부 옹부딩 옹부 넘버 서버다. 옹부 두부디 네 라니 지고게 체드네 가서 그래베 타버터버 치야 대야네 가서 그래. 지 다 인도 다좀에 공방 방법 텐디니로 인도 다좀에 대체되네 람지 람냠린체 네 윤디 방제 조체 네 타버터제 조체 인도 다좀에 공방데 방 톱제 조치고 여러
당부디라야
윤도기 택바데
that's fine. So let's go back. Let's look then in context of this third fearlessness, where it says these obscurations such as attachment act as to obstruct the 3 vehicles. What are the 3 vehicles? Firstly, what does this word vehicle mean? The notion of lifting oneself up or lifting a foot out of the cycle of births and deaths, samsara. That's a vehicle, isn't it? It's a vehicle by which you do that. So there are 3 levels of that state. initial, middling, and vast enlightenments. So in that initial enlightenment or lesser enlightenment, the first category, Shravaka or hearer, practitioner, what's their purpose? What's their goal? Their purpose is just to be liberated for oneself. They are wanting to abandon, by way of the path, and obtain the hearer's arhathood by abandoning the obstacles to that. So primarily they're abandoning afflictions. Secondly, they're liberated. Thirdly, fruit of an arhat, a hearer. No.
다 랑제기 택버스 랑제서야 되네. 랑제야 되네. 다 랑제 다주메 공방 토바. 다주메 공방 되네. 아니 당부 개개인의 수니 야 지 랑제 다주메 공방 토베. 다 타버터야 그 람그림바데 예 차산니 야고지니 이게디 롭종 야고체. 아니 되네 신나질래 로샤다 라면 최니니 라마데오시고 따다 리과야 고요로 텐데가나 코접샤는 디레 한신다 시다 망보여 당일은 코된 대식 신나 리고
야야
가서나 그최 암저 망고 년배이나 딩산 미카시엔데 라고도 아니가 심투도 그랬어 디거 그런 사람 단단만 리고 그러지 최그 심투야 가래라 디제다가 망고 깨져 망고 많이 메시다 곰장장 잡제 신나질래야 도제네 다좀에 곰방 토바 치기 있지 돈이들라 랑게 다좀 봐 쓰르다 랑게스니 티 밀레야 준 듀먹어 돈이디 시겨요 유용하는 미카제도 밀레 준에 듀먹어 수수지고 수수 데도 장장 삼다 밀레 삼로치는 마다니 소리시다 랑게 된리러지 요서다 기겐레 듀먹어체 기겐 듀나 심투도 그래서 암전이나 다망고니나 아니 심투도 그래서 제도 랑게서 돼 옹본노보 요베다로 가서나 로존 상마치 타워터야가 람차산 장 수수 딩주 톱 수수 신나질래 로셔거라 이제 스르데베 랑게서
yeah, rhinoceros.
랑게들 망고여 야와 망고여
Right now, so what the translator forgot to say was that these three levels of enlightenment are like lesser, middling, and very sharp capacity. So that initial one that we had first, the hearer, was perhaps less sharp. This next one, the solitary realizer, is of middling capacity. So what do the Pratyeka Buddhas do, the solitary realizers? They listen from a teacher how to be liberated from samsara, and that's fine for them then. Having listened, they go away to a forest and they just want to do it. They want to meditate and get out of samsara. You know, at that stage they're like, oh, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. That's enough. So in a sense, they're sharp, isn't it? Because they've listened to how to get out. They've got their path and they're doing it. And we see that with some people, you know, when they approach Dharma, they're like, oh, I don't want to study too much Dharma. I don't want to hear too much. I'm so confused. Yeah, right. Like that. So it's kind of imprints, isn't it? It could be like that. But in one sense, they're sharp because they've heard it and they go to stay alone. They no longer want to rely on a teacher and they get liberated from having heard how to do so. And within this Pratyeka Buddha or solitary realizer, there are again many divisions, but they're often called rhinoceros-like because they like to stay alone.
세상 그런 게 면람데 자로 가라 자주메 고마토벌라 로벤신 기겐신라 마데바네 나 자주메 고마토바 지긴세 면람 먹고 자라
야
세상은 잠블링데라 다저도 마셔지도 마페고나 데 잠블링데라 란제 자주메 먹고 곰잡되기 요래 와라나슬라데서
할래
아니 초주 산제 다제 다 저랑서 도그레스 데레 최신이 용고레스 저랑서 최신이 고고요 말은 다 조스 사자신달라
할래
레 아니 장제도서 추리된 그런서 고제 되지 당제 네 되네 매바 원에 추자고 추리 넘어 나서 된제 세상 와르나슬라 탄송홍에 리다스기도 탄송홍 미디즈 다 탄송도서 살마 남네 말 홍용도 밍도 스토어 와르나슬라 제가 초주 산제 라담다 저런서 도어레스 just 산제 용고요 딜레 레두저 사가 여러 가지 나 암저 망문님이 단요고도 많다서 개개 메시지를 두긴 라데 레베 두저 사가 여다 sabse 마셔나로 제자한테 네 산제 페요인데 딱 개개 먹고 슬랍사도 딱 산제 개개로다 다 저는 몰람 잡사레스 다 도그레스 잠블린 신달라 아니 산제 디제 상마 잠블린 신다 코란 링디 산제 마서든데 개개 메서든데 링든데 대요 따요 거서 야데 산제 질레요 야 거서 도그래요
양 보여도 그래.
야 도그래 산제 신다 질라 잠블린 산제 메서질레 도그래 거서 개개 메서질레 도그래 일다 제당 거서 뒤주 한적하시는데 라기도 아니 유튜브 기갱 펜도고 말다로 온라인 기갱 시라시라 펜도고 말 망보지 등사 링다 당고라 자원 머신게 온라인 당고래 디 자원 머신은 거 링다 다요 말 자원 머신은 다나 자원 머신은 또 번냠 바시고 여러 먼저 자원 머신은 또 번냠 바 멤버 인자 디 링다 담바이나 따다 되게요 말 링다 다요 말 될래야 여름에 또 그냥 봐주는 안에 랜드체는 되고요. 티야 딩안주 딩상 여름에 온라인 나와는 것도 말을 쓰기도 하면서 가시요 온라인 근데 제장에 디 온라인 간라야 디 직도 싫어 용고요 말아. 제당 이제 난주 모드도 시에도 디그로 난주 모드 시에 진단이야도 디그로 제장 어디 디릭도 조대장도 삽삽치 기제시 삼로단도 삽삽치 버려와 먼저도 미망보도 당아 이게 뭐고 이게 메시지를 지우질 도긴 거기서 무슨 아니 레동자 십사고도라.
So these second level of realizers, the middling realizers of enlightenment, solitary realizers, in a sense, it is the fruit of their aspirations, that they have made these aspirations previously to not need a teacher. And in fact, prior to Buddha Shakyamuni coming to this world around Varanasi, there were a lot of these solitary realizer arhats. So when Buddha came, it was like Sangye Korang Labare, Mishemba.
Choju Sanje, Nanganema Dajab, that's one of the doors.
Okay. So then when Buddha was approaching to teach, a sound came from space to these solitary realizers saying, don't stay here. The Buddha is coming, in a sense, go away. So then Varanasi got this name of the signs of miraculous ascetics, because a lot of them dissolved their bodies as they do from above and below with fire, to get rid of that aggregate, to go to another world system, because they would hear, like the Buddha is coming. Because they had made these aspirations to not hear from a teacher, it would create non-virtue if they stayed in the vicinity of Buddha, Ragisla. So they would then go to wherever it is, another world system, that they complete their practice. And then maybe from that world system, when another Buddha goes there, they'd have to be moved on again, and so it goes. So, so why was this being said? Because it could be disadvantageous to say that you think you don't need a teacher, or that you can just be alone, in that context. That's why we have to take care of the teachings we take on YouTube, and then the way we see His Holiness. We shouldn't compare lamas to him, because if we know that His Holiness is realized, and you shouldn't really kind of compare with His Holiness. In terms of the point being made is, when you make these discernments around teachers, it creates a negative precedent to perhaps not hear teachings from them in the future. So one needs to be careful, particularly also when taking empowerments, it's different if it's just a preliminary teaching, but if it's empowerments, one needs to take care around online teachings on YouTube and so forth. No.
그래서 먼저 출라데 비즈니스 말다더라.
Yeah. The Dharma is not a business.
저런저 누절의 비즈니스 디시에서 출디 디난 띠르단지요 말해서.
Yeah, so particularly as Westerners, we should not mix business with Dharma like yeah.
세상에 인도상가라. 야 제메 란제다 좀 버릇이 차요.
Yeah, so if one has that type of attitude, you could become like that, a solitary realizer arahat.
되네. 추추추추라 총 뒤지잖아. 근데 추 남다 신이기 근데 이제 매우 잘 오르스러.
I see. So if the Dharma's looked, if you look at the Dharma like a business, then that could be like the teacher's not important. You know what I'm saying? So therefore that could create the course time not
아, 네 신이 도움 들어.
I'm not saying look at me like that, but I'm just saying generically, you know.
비즈니스라고 쳐야 되는데 되는 처음 알아.
Yeah, what's being said is that if the Dharma becomes business, what spiritual practice is that?
그래서는 먼저 나랑 공부해 자야도 상마다 그 필요한 장샤로. 스페셜해야 돼. 대우처럼도 진짜다. 저도 스페셜해야지도. 뒤쳐내 대우면다. 먼저 공부하다 그게 상마 가디 있는 자. 준다질라 주주 시행아 되고 될래. 라자 고문지에 요 말봐. 되게 뭐 상마 배 삼만남다. 배 펜심 장장게 티되게요. 아니 내가 진짜다 내가 스페셜해 코스 스페셜해 샤디 대보다 민도다로. 대보라면
So in the monastery, all of the teachings were free. Sometimes we'd stay with the teachers, the gurus, 4 or 5 hours a week. Their sole intention was bodhicitta, to teach us, no cost involved. So here, where we are, when we have to charge for courses, that could make a different feeling.
드디어 맞아서. 전에도 티징이 태고서야 되는 티징이다. 태고 숨나는 인도에 태고 이제 태고 자생이 태고. 자생이 태고서야 되다. 라니 지고게 돈다삼 라니 지고 거월에 타는 지금도 세디게 수수 파마 세디게 가린 집에 파마 집에 심지 탐제네. 그러다 지 년도에다가 얘기 남도서 삼무당용도네. 랜덱 남샤다 겨우마지도 시행으로 그래서 시행도 다 심지 탐제랑 마치뇨 버시어데. 아니 대시행도 다 수수가린 신이 심지도 강에 태대샤 이제 동일에 태워치고도 다 동일에 태베 탑지술라도 서다용데. 아니 산제 냐지르면서 요말에도 왕랑서 배샤 망고스네 동에 세도면도 아니 게다 첨부로 버지 차 자나에 동에세도에 민도와 도와 아니 미 코르망고 뒤에네 동에세도에 민도와 단도 상무타마시나나 동에 마르마르도 아니가도와 디제 그러 상무타마시나나 배샤망고 요는 니모고 버지 대냐가도와 아니 상무타마시나 민침보이나 아제 숙침보 차제 가도이나 콘도 사주죠 차제 대 니모고 대냐가 첨보여라 네 코르망고요나 네 단도야 지배 된데다 아제 전부 차지 밀이야 투 사수수 시부지 인천이야 된데 인가도 제가 네 펜토야 말하다 삼무다마시나 디제기 강에서 아닌가요 다 샘지 신 탐제기 동에세 생구 동에세 오르면 루 동에다 아주 내가 잡아 생구 동에세를 뒤제스 감담에 와치다와 신고래 대신에 산제냐지그래 제가 산지지고 마토고도 삼다운데네. 근데 심지 신이 되는데 산지지고 마타도 그 디지털적으로 삼다운데네. 티징 택바서는다 전주 샘 로드 치아든지 기부 첨부서는 무슨 거라.
Now the realizer of the great enlightenment, the third vehicle of the Mahayana. Here, the motivation is not just you, the kind parents of this life, how kind they've been, all sentient beings in that regard, seeing what are the paths of the hearers and solitary realizers and what they're going for, the limit of it, but going deeper than that into the validation of past lives and the subtle workings of behavioral cause and effect, in the sense that each sentient being has in fact been one's kind parent, one's mother, but is experiencing suffering, and who is in a position to remove the suffering of those sentient beings? Only a Buddhist superior to realize the great enlightenment. Well, money won't remove the suffering of those beings. Fame, probably not. Suffering won't be removed by being famous or even having a retinue, like a lot of helpers. In some sense, that, suffering can even increase with more finance. If you worry about your business or money, or if you have a name and reputation that you're trying to keep, you get proud around that and you can't sleep. Or if you have a retinue, you might think you're someone. Now, to remove the suffering of sentient beings, first one has to remove one's own sufferings. Of course, to some extent, we're talking about the body, but really it is mental, it is the mind, the afflictions that have to be removed. And so then with regards to removing, and it's only by knowing the dispositions and karmas of sentient beings and removing your own afflictions that you'll come to know them. So then the real cause of that state of great enlightenment is bodhicitta. So here we're talking about a kind of a braver resolve or courageous. Ningtok.
어디래 다 숨버디 되잘라서 왜 디버디다 태고선지 파제체고를 지베디 다음에 신데 파드주의 최를 민지가 하시로.
Yeah, so therefore that's that third type of fearlessness, isn't it? These obscurations such as attachment act as obstruct the three vehicles.
다시 어디 년보 탐제를 민지고 써야 돼. 탐제 시원이 당스 남진식 남제 너 탐제 시원이 써야 돼. 남제 남시원이 남시를 팀이지 남랭이 와중에서도 시시다 시시 남시 남제 숨데 이니 덴바데 메베 신드엔딩 예와추에 남덴발라 민지 바스로 와드르다
그래서디 시바디 내종 좀 식식이여 와디
냠베 남스르바 저도 냠베 남데라네 남제 남시 시시 니중다 택바송게 람 탐제 니와주에 남라네 덴발라 민지 바스라인데 냠보 탐제발라 민지 바스르.
Yeah. So this fourth one, the fearlessness with regard to revealing the path of definite emergence for others' purpose, since there exists no dispute concordant with the Dharma in regards to one's claim in the midst of a retinue. Here, because one is an exalted knower, a superior Buddha, one knows what are the abandonments of the knower of paths, knower of basises, of all those levels. No. Yeah.
What is the point of him, the text repeatedly saying, in the midst of a retinue?
Yes. Kishla teen nangla, peja nangla, kori yudu, pina sangigi kori nyamdu yudu, shiwa mebarwadi. Karichena kor nangla.
Kor nangla, jigwa mebasidi.
Yeah, karichena kor nangla. Pina gechu mangbun nyamdu.
Teda shego ora, den chu shego ni gedo mangbu. Manaz mika she den hold dan den nandu de ni geje shemun dargdo.
Nervous.
제가 콜을 망고 요나 콜도 좀 있다 또 같은 거 janjarwa chanju semba dan chanju semda 돈이 또 같은데 여be 인자 되게 선한 것도 그 가시 수수 추셔야지 중요요 말 산제라든데 요 말을 제가 어디 시고 민지 보세요.
It's a fearlessness. It's talking about retinue because the basic point of a Buddha is to teach. So sometimes if we go to give a teaching in a hall, we might get nervous in public. But when the Buddha goes to teach, in the retinue, in the audience, might be bodhisattvas who have great merit. So Buddha has no fear around teaching those higher levels of.
예, 코르는데 박사와 매버스 냥아와 매버스 신나스나 매버스 원다. 똑바디 요로.
Yeah.
파스르그네샤고 신다데.
There's a kind of a confidence, let's say, that there's no anxiety, and that's a realization.
단단히 빼나 이제라가 지지를 민지고 시체스 그래서나. 아니 생기다 최송배 된지 민지고스래. 생기디 아니 리다기 제보 리다 컨데질은 시기요 말아. 어디나 신세 올다.
Following on from that, it says, why are they called fearlessnesses? Fearlessness in the sense that they're similar to a lion. The lion within when it's amongst other wild animals, is not scared. It is like that.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And maybe I've misunderstood that, but when you were talking about the three vehicles, the initial and the middling ones, you were talking about the hearers in the initial one.
That's right.
So it's different from how we normally look at the lower vehicle and that just wants a higher regress. Because normally when we talk initial vehicle, the motivation is just to have a higher regress. Isn't it? Like to be reborn as a human.
Oh, no. Britta, it's not talking about the three scopes. There are three realizers of enlightenment.
Okay.
Hera,
solitary
realizer, and Buddha.
And Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not talking about three scopes. I'm sorry if it came across like that.
Well, it did small, middling, great, so it did.
Yeah, well, small, middling, great was referring to their sharp faculties.
Okay.
So I should have said less sharp, middling sharp.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
네.
Alish, Gishla singing Nangshin, why you did? We don't Nangla Michipadi. Pedun, what pedun?
줄차례 그래 줄줄에.
Gilsa.
네요. 어디지? 다디 민지고디 되고시. 다 주면도 소연데 그래 와시디. 샤시다.
Tadixra, Tam Mulanjana. Tiva Shembayana.
Yeah,
we won't go into the 4 individual correct knowledges. We'll perhaps dedicate now. But first, any more questions? From anything that wasn't clear? Discussion, yes, Kishla. Next Wednesday at 10.
That object any Minjigba imbe Gajinji Dojidan Derek in the Midincho never diminuba said. Any day tola that to use so same day ni Midincho never diminuba can dischago the Tinder Tiro in the channel. That's Angela she does she does it. Susuli she does it in the Yazara.
Okay, so now in discussion from the 10 strengths where we get to that point about the Vajra-like, they have a Vajra-like quality, or Indra's Vajra, that they can't be, Buddha's knowledge can't be overpowered by invalid thoughts. Rather than focus on the Buddha in discussion, try and talk about how your mind cannot be overcome by negative thought. That might be more realistic in discussion.
Dine danda minjiweshidi, che dina la danda tekwasumda, adim danda di buta kiwuchim chinding chusumda, tekwasum desmenda yoro. Di chawakara yumedi, sewishana yoro.
Yeah. Now, referring to Britta's query, go through the 3 vehicles again. Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, Bodhisattva or Buddha Superior, those 3. Or you could say, Hera, solitary realizer. Yeah, and then go through your thing, Britta. Initial.
Don't say like that.
Not your thing. No. Your query of initial, medium, and vast capacity. So demarcate those 2 threefold divisions. What's the difference between those 3? 2. Then it will be clear. Those 2 sets, right? You've got 2 sets of 3 things. What's the difference between the 2?
Yeah.
That's the way you do it.
That did you.
Yep, that's it. Mijigbashi Tigaro, Konzo Jolin Chegaro. Yeah, you can discuss. It's good to discuss the four fearlessnesses as well. We'll dedicate now.
Sanje shinje mize owaye dodo manda shinla chupash lame guze rabdi shin namba tene choju gyavata bimbe dweme sasunye dwewe mese dado negosh
Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of the Guru Buddha, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive attention I may have created by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and reflecting on the Buddha's stand and teach, I now dedicate all that for awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue which the dedication places at the best, but the victorious ones thus born with 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma, Sankhapa's way of Dharma practice and flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified and all conducive circumstances be complete. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech. May all embodied wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Thank you for the soul and teachings and transmigrated beings. We may